Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books Author Reading Series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
So, with that, let's talk some talk, and then there'll be more talk about talk afterwards. Thank you.
Is that close enough? Oh, I'm loud, but not that loud. Okay. I'm Natalie Mitchell. I'll be playing Emily.
And I'm Amelia Harris. Good idea. And I'm Amelia Harris, and I'll be playing Marsha.
Marsha's love story.
My average relationship with a man, actually talking to each other, loving each other, relating to each other, sleeping with each other, is usually 1 to 2 weeks in duration. The amount of time I spend feeling rejected, crying over it, not seeing him but living it out, is 3 to 4 years.
You know, when I was going out with Emil Reinhardt, with my doctor, he said it sounded like a 3-penny novel.
My doctor says my life is a soap opera.
No, mine said 3-penny novel.
Soap opera.
His grasp of dialect is different. So anyway, the point is that my syndrome is just the opposite of yours. I mean, the most important thing for me is what I trump up before I sleep with a man. Like, what was going on when I met Emil Reinhardt? The perfumed missives, the secret assignations, and the ricocheted rendezvous. When we finally did make it, I mean, it was great, but I really like the foreplay better than the act itself. I mean, then I went on for 2 years moaning and groaning for all that it was worth. And you know, it wasn't worth that much.
I'm more involved in the aftermath and after birth. You're more involved in the pregnancy.
What does it mean? Take Timothy Cullen. Okay, you met Timothy Cullen. You said this might be a healthy specimen. I'm giving him a chance. He's Irish. He has a mustache.
Dark glasses.
Yeah, French clothes. I mean, he dances. You had a whole thing about how healthy you thought he was. Soon as he met you, he wanted to go to bed with you. And you wouldn't go to bed with him, right?
Then I started building up a dread.
Mm-hmm. The actual pattern is the first week he loves you, you don't love him. Second week, he gets the idea you don't love him, and he stops loving you. You get the idea he's not loving you, and you start loving him. Third week, 0.
Where are we now, 6 months later?
It ends with you're still in love with him because it's unresolved. He feels rejected. He finally gets the message you don't want any dirty part of him, cunning as he is.
Man. You know what sticks in my mind? Do you remember there was one night in the Dom? It was the first week when he was in love with me, and his eyes didn't leave the nape of my neck the whole entire evening. Every time I sensed him coming near me, I zooped up and sat somewhere else.
Ugh, as long as you didn't zeke up, you're okay.
Ugh, I just couldn't stand the pressure, the clinging.
He was clinging?
He was clinging. He was calling me up constantly. What are you doing tonight? Where will you be tomorrow? Where are you every minute of the day?
Okay, remember the night you called him 25 times? More than 25 times. He was out all night, you didn't know where, and you kept calling him like every 2 seconds.
And then the next morning was the big breakup. He found his Marie.
Marie, the dawn is breaking. Marshy's heart. Go on.
Where? He'll be back any second.
Well, what if Zeke Sutherland fell in love with you? I mean, what would happen?
Even Zeke Sutherland made me nervous when he liked me. But I couldn't get too nervous because he got so nervous so fast I didn't have time.
Well, I got nervous to death with Michael Christie. I rejected him.
And then you have the same pattern, that the actual relationship is minimal in the gestalt of the whole thing. For me, the actual relationship is something to get over with, so I can drop into the mud, and my heart can pound dialing a certain number I'm not supposed to dial. That's the essence of it.
So all they really are vehicles for acting things out?
Instruments on which to play my problems.
Who said that?
Me.
Very good. Okay, if art makes visible that which is invisible, You can imagine what problems do. Emily and Marsha play a game.
Okay. Sydney Greenstreet or Peter Lorre?
Ooh. Sydney Greenstreet.
Joe DiMaggio or Arthur Miller?
Oh, Joe DiMaggio, he went to the funeral.
Yeah, he organized the whole thing. Jack Kennedy or...
What about me?
You'll get your turn. You'll be asking me. Jack Kennedy or Fidel Castro?
That's very close. I mean, when you first said it, I didn't think so, but, it's actually really very close.
Neither did I when I first said it.
I think Fidel.
Fidel castrated?
Yeah. Jack Ruby or Lee Oswald?
Lee Harvey.
George Washington or Abraham Lincoln?
Are you kidding? George Washington with his teeth coming out every night and the wig coming off?
Yeah.
Hoagie Carmichael or Stokely Carmichael?
Black Power.
Susan Sontag or Marisol?
Oh, Susan Sontag. Marisol would be too passive.
Norman Mailer or Philip Roth?
Well, I've never met Philip Roth.
It's an interesting choice.
Yeah, I've never met Philip Roth, but I think it would probably be Miller.
It would.
Marsha and Emily talk about Nathan, Philippe, Andy Warhol, and Nancy Drew.
Which of your abortions was your favorite?
My Puerto Rican one. I loved it.
Oh, we had a great time with that abortion.
Yeah, it was like a made-to-order vacation.
Cut to order, you might say.
Very safe, no pain. Except that I was really scared shitless because it was my first. I was very brave. Do you remember?
And I was very good to you. I played the husband. You didn't even know me when I had mine.
Philippe was a scoundrel. He was the father of my child. He had lived with me for almost 3 years, and on the night of the abortion, he was screwing someone else. God, do you think you can throw away 3 years of your life? Yes.
Are you asking the right person? Yes.
If someone who didn't know Philippe asked you to describe him, what would you say?
I'd say he was a broken coil.
That's really good. Because he was so tense and yet so completely ineffectual. Those are the two biggest things about him, his tension and his passivity.
And this was your ideal man.
Isn't this marvelous, the way to cut parsley? Calder's wife taught it to me. Actually, no, it should be in a glass that's half the perimeter.
How about turning down that Dionne Warwick?
Oh God, I love these lyrics. And when you feel you can't accept the abuse you're taking, reach out for me. I'll see you through. I'll be there. See, it's really about us. It says to the guy, when you're broken in two, when you're weak and abused and you can't pick up your fucking feet off the floor, you're a total washout flunky failure. Then what, huh? Just come to old Emily Brenson. She'll nurse you. She'll pick up all the pieces, right? Michael Christie, perfect example. I'm telling him to reach out for me. I'll see him through. If he wants a little bit of drink, I'll perpetuate his drunkenness and give him one because he can't accept the abuse he's taking. Doesn't it make sense?
It makes sense.
Okay, let me ask you something. I want to know exactly what you think of the new dancing. I've been sitting here trying to analyze it. Do you realize that it makes the women equal to the man for the very first time? She doesn't have to follow him anymore. He doesn't control the rhythms. The music is something they share.
She can express herself.
Right. There. Now separate but equal. The dancing is all about individual style. Also, popular opinion to the contrary, I think it has more to do with relating than the old kind of dancing did.
Those imitations you do of people dancing? Mm-hmm. You couldn't have done them with the old dancing.
No. Now there's a rhythm and a generalized style to follow, but still the way Timothy Collin does something and the way Nathan Foss does it is completely unique. Whereas if they were foxtrotting or whatever the fuck it was we used to do, even the twist, it probably wouldn't have been that different. Okay, what else is involved? Like the women is dancing. Is she dancing for the man?
No, I think she's dancing for the public. And they're dancing out their relationship, if they have one.
Emily approaches her birthday.
I get a very scary feeling sometimes that I'm pushing myself into a corner. All of a sudden, I'm beginning to find everyone, except you and Vinny, very dull. We've set up such a stimulating, total, free, hysterical, intimate, intense relationship that I find it impossible to relate to other people. They leave me completely cold. If someone else comes into the house, I get annoyed because they cut down our communication.
Marsha and Emily's last day on the beach. But obviously, it's not the end of East Hampton. I mean, a lot of people are going to stay on. The ones who've bought houses and made all that fucking investment.
They're the ones who ruined it.
Let's quickly dissect what the East Hampton beach scene is, okay? First of all, there are those perennial people who come out every summer, the couples with babies who have a certain amount of money, and when they're on the beach, they're with friends who are just like them, couples with children. And if they have guests for the weekend, they're men who bring their girlfriends. That's one category. Then there's the 30-year-old woman who's fucked around. Maybe she's been married, she has a house out here with her girlfriends, and she's been beachcombing for the weekend guests. She's looking for a man up the wrong tree. Then there are the single men who come out here in groups.
I haven't seen any of that.
I've been buoying myself up here in the sand for great action, lest I sink. Oh, he's not bad. The bald midget guy with the orange shirt and the orange cigarette.
He's leaving.
Yeah, that's what's not bad about him.
Do you like bald men?
My father was bald.
I didn't ask you that.
You mean in like as a sensory thing? No. Do you?
I'm beginning to.
It's a good thing, too. Vinny is right about this. Definitely being a middle-class family coupled situation. I think the real emotional, intellectual upper class are people who don't group to begin with. But the beach is still a nice collection of people, basically very varied, very heterogeneous. It's nothing like, say, Jones Beach, where people are just strangers.
No, it's a personality beach.
It's a party. With the pretense of being a beach, a kind of fantasy charade of people's projections. Like, look, when I see Kira walk by, what I see is a poster flyer for his show. Look at him. He's walking up and down like it's a cocktail party. He's only making contact with people to revitalize the image he has about himself. It becomes so-and-so painter, or so-and-so author, or so-and-so who may have problems with his, or not so-and-so, a man who may have problems with his wife. But you still very well might meet somebody when you're out here by yourself.
Yeah, if there's anyone to meet. Hey, I don't blame you for liking this guy, the guy with the nose.
Yeah, he's great, isn't he? One of the nicest guys on the beach.
If not the.
He's not too hairy. He's not too old. He's the ideal man. He shouldn't be completely bald. He shouldn't have to wear glasses like all the time. He shouldn't be too tired after dinner. He shouldn't lose too many jobs inside of a year. Shouldn't smoke more than 6 packs of cigarettes a day. He shouldn't forget your name more than every now and then. He shouldn't be too queer. He shouldn't have too many alcoholic beverages or too many crying jags.
Shouldn't have too much possessive resistance.
Or too many pairs of the same tassel loafers. Or too many Lacoste shirts.
What's that?
You know those tennis shirts with the alligator on them? He shouldn't have too many friends named Shep or Mirren.
Armand. He shouldn't wear white socks with his tassel loafers.
No, he shouldn't smoke pot all day and sleep until 5 in the afternoon. You know, I'd really like to talk about love for a second, Marshy. Because I've said a lot of very 29-year-old drunken things this summer, but I can say right now that I don't want any more married men, and I don't want any weak men, and I don't want any men that I've ever known before. I think I'm just about ready to find someone who's healthy enough to take the chance of getting married to me.
Amen.
That's it.
That was fantastic. And now Linda will come up and take some questions and further illuminate us on the story behind the book.
I guess so. Weren't they great, though? Fabulous. Yeah. Well, Allison pretty much told you the history of the book, that it was first published in 1968, had a long hiatus, and New York Review picked it up and just republished it this week. And as these are the things that I was going to say, but that it was at first published as pure fiction that I had invented. I don't know if I could have invented some of those conversations, but I was very unhappy at the time that they refused to present it for what it was, and was both happy and not so happy when it came out that these were 3 people, that I was one of the 3 people. Made it a little more complicated, but the late 60s was a time where so much was happening, so much was changing in music, in art. There was a whole reality gestalt going on of artists painting from photographs, and Rauschenberg said something about being interested in being the space between life and art. And I think this sort of fell into that whole way of thinking. And it was sort of shocking in its day, and now so much has happened, including girls and Broad City and all that it's seen sort of as the progenitor or the grandma of those things. But I'll be happy to answer any questions. Yes?
I was struck by a comment you made on dancing, and is the woman dancing for the man? No, she's dancing for the public. Could you just riff on that a little bit more for me? Because there's this poet Tagore who's a philosopher. I really appreciate Nussbaum, and he was motivated looking at dance, and so I've been thinking a lot of dance and women in dance, and how Western culture has really created a perversion in a certain sense, especially of ballet, which has its beginnings. I mean, we turned ballet into a way to prostitute women and express an aristocracy, when it began with this real yogic, these wonderful cultures in India, and it began as a poetic expression, a way to commune with God. So I think of dance. And I'm thinking of, it just struck me what you were saying about the woman. She doesn't dance for the man, she dances for the public. And I'm just wondering if that isn't an expression of the politics of the time, or why you would think that way.
I guess you could look at it that way. But it was such a radical break from the kind of, man, woman holding each other, following prescribed steps, that it was like everything else that was happening then. It was completely revolutionary in terms of everybody was, quote, doing their own thing. And, the man and women were opposite each other, but they were doing what they felt the music was meaning to them.
So it's almost, it feels like you were expressing a public politic, as if, because feminism now is in such a cramped place.
Right.
And I think you had a freedom of expression and a beauty in your vision that maybe needs to regenerate what's going on with women today. And I'm just, I feel something, I feel breadth and depth, and I feel a freeness pop out of that word that just is missing today. And I just, I want to thank you so much for, because this closeness and intimacy we have with women and this nascent expression of having some force in the world, for the first time, it's exciting. So your work brings that excitement that sometimes is lacking in the expression of families.
Well, that's nice to hear. Thanks. Pam.
How conscious were you three of the tape recorder as time went on?
You forget that it's on. And it was just always on. We took it to the beach. It was everywhere. There's one thing where the male character and Emily go out together without Marsha, and they take the tape recorder with them. And then when they come back, Marsha plays the tape so she hears what they were saying about her. Mm-hmm. So it was like another character, and yet it was a very visibly invisible. Juan.
Hey, Linda. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I'm going to express my ignorance here, but could you tell us who originally published it? And then I assume, since it was such a creative and different idea for what they call fiction, that it wasn't an idea assigned by some editor somewhere, so that you must have gone through a process to get it accepted and so on. I don't know how difficult.
Yeah, a lot of rejections.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
A lot of people said repellently raunchy was one of the terms. But this one editor at Putnam really fought for it, and he had to fight for it. And he got it through, but with all these restrictions. No. This is purely made up. This is not tape recorded. It was a long.
How long did it take from the time that you felt you had a fairly finished product to the time that it was accepted for publication? Was it a short time?
No, it went around and around and around the publishing world for, 6 months, maybe more. James.
Linda, could you talk a bit about the generation of where the idea came from? How it sort of began and how you began with the tape recorder. Where did it actually start?
Well, I remember the moment that I got the idea. I can sort of visually see it all these decades later in my apartment. And I don't think I was consciously aware that it was part of what was happening in other ways, in other media. But I had a tape recorder. I would use it the way people do. I tape recorded my grandfather's Russian stories. It just seemed to me, I knew that I was going away for this period of time, that these other people would be there, and it just struck me that it would be a fantastic thing to do. It was just really there. Yes.
But did you have a plan in advance that you were going to publish something, or were you just?
Oh yeah, it was to do a book, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Did your friends know?
Oh, of course, yeah. They had to sign every page of the manuscript as a release. So.
Where are they now?
Well, they've changed. Their lives have changed a lot. The gay character has been married twice and has many children and grandchildren. And the actress is still acting. She's in LA. So they're still very much around. Yes.
I think somebody already asked this, but knowing your friends before the recordings and then hitting record, just in the beginning stages, did you see them change? Try to sound more intellectual or anything?
No. No. They were that way. They were funny and they were smart.
Yeah. Worth recording.
Did you think you were doing something new with the form, like new journalism? What was your thinking process?
It's a long time ago, so it's really hard to really track it. But I knew it hadn't been done. I think Andy Warhol published his tape book before mine, but that I was working on it earlier. And he kind of acknowledged that I was doing it before. And he made no attempt to shape it into anything. It was just the raw tape, and, he wouldn't ever want to, make it into a novel or anything. But I was, in that culture, I was very much more in the art world than in any literary world, so I knew what was happening, and I saw a lot more happening there than in books.
So you were thinking of it as performance art then? Or
I wouldn't have used that term, but I probably was in a way.
How did the raunch level compare with the raunchiness of men's work at that time?
I don't know. Portnoy's Complaint came out a year or two later. And Philip Roth recently said something about that. He was, I forget the two words, but he was both embarrassed and proud that he had done it. That's misquoting it. And that caused a sensation, the masturbation in there. So, there have always been erotic books, and
I was wondering if the rejection or the criticism of the repellent raunch or whatever, how much of that was tied to the fact that you were female, that the characters having these conversations were female versus
I don't really think so.
No.
I know you. I know that's your thing.
Did you have an idea of the storyline before you hit record? Or did you hit record, then listen, and then...
The storyline sort of emerged. I thought of it as plotless, that it was just going on. But looking at it when it was finished, there was definitely a beginning, middle, and end. And
so it came to you more after you were listening to...
Yeah.
Now, did I read some of the original 12 characters?
There was not a specific number, but I thought there would probably be 5 or 6.
So
and
did you eliminate some characters?
Oh, yeah.
And there's
but
are the 3 voices speaking for more than 3 characters?
No. There was one character who's talked about a lot who was actually a combination of 2 people. But the 3 are the 3. But when I tried to, let alone even hear all these different voices and try and transcribe it, it was absolutely not the right way to go. So it soon became 3.
Mom? I'm actually curious about this. When I was a little girl, you kept all of your books in my bedroom, no less. And it was actually in Brooklyn in my bedroom, and Talk was in there. But I wasn't allowed to read it, which furthermore made me read it. So I remember reading 2 sentences, and I was absolutely horrified. And I think I was about 8 or something, and I didn't even know what I was really reading, but I knew it was, and so much has happened within my generation. What age do you think it's okay for someone to pick up a book? Well, I mean, pick up a book and act as a 15-year-old, because that's where 15-year-olds are at now. And this is, to me, not as racy as it was.
What would you say?
Unfortunately, kids are.
Even YA, even young adult literature now deals with everything.
Because you have girls, as everyone keeps saying, girls out there, and there's 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds that are watching this, so it really has changed so much. So I just remember growing up and not being able to read it, and that would be so different now in a family if it was different times. That's all I have to say. As long as they're reading.
Reading
is fundamental.
Should I introduce you? This is one of the characters in the book. When you read it, the guy that they were describing as wearing French clothes, mustache, dancing. There he is. Timothy Cullen, a.k.a. Mike Todd.
I was just back from 2 years in Paris.
Yeah.
And, something you said about the dance thing was very significant.
Oh, you were a great dancer. And probably still are.
Well, the thing is, I could not dance.
No, I remember you practiced in front of a mirror.
Well, I could not follow steps of any kind, so I could not do the foxtrot.
Right. So this was a good thing for you then.
Well, what happened is in the bars in New York, the artist bars, people would start dancing. And some of the artist bars, especially one I went to, started changing over to a Negro bar, a black bar. And I don't know, I just stayed because they were dancing so beautifully, so fabulously. And the music just came coursing into my body. And I absorbed it by osmosis. And one day I got up and I could do it.
No, you were
They said,
great.
oh, you're doing the Philadelphia so-and-so, which I didn't know what that was. But it was the freedom of dancing.
Yeah.
And then not having to be tied
Exactly.
to someone.
Exactly.
And I mean, I was never a leader, so I hated to lead.
No comment. Yeah. Right.
I was curious of the fiction aspect, like once you had gone through the transcripts and then had this book, upon reflection, did you feel like it was kind of what really happened, or did you see a kind of like your bias in it, or and then like the line between truth and fiction, and if you did feel there was an element of fiction that you had created, or
Well, as I was shaping it, I obviously wanted to be coherent in some way, and I mean, it has a balanced first chapter and last chapter. First chapter, she's packing for the summer. Last chapter, she's unpacking. So those kinds of rhythms developed. But I didn't see. I saw it as reality, because this is the way we spoke to each other. I mean, there was an incredible closeness that I think you can only have when you're in your 20s. After you're really involved with other people. But this was very familial and very unjudgmental, and anybody could just say anything.
And then I guess as a follow-up, I was thinking like which came first, the medium or the message, and so like when you had that epiphany in the apartment, were you remembering how beautiful the conversations were in the Hamptons the year before, and that you had to record them, or did you see the tape recorder and say like, oh, what would be the best thing I could tape,
I had been in the Hamptons the summer before, but much more on my own. I didn't have friends there as much. It's hard to put myself back there, but it was the tape recorder that impelled the idea, the concept of taping. Right. And I had a really nice experience. A friend of mine was with Leonard Cohen one night, and she called me from wherever they were, probably stoned, and she said, Leonard wants to say something to you. So he came on, I've never met him, he came on the phone and he said, I read this book in Greece, I read it out loud, and I had tried to do a taped book once, and I decided it couldn't be done, and you did it. So that was one of the highlights of mine. Anything. It got very diverse responses. I mean, a lot of people hated it. A lot of people really liked it. And this time around, it's just much more positive, and people are much more accepting. I mean, so far it's been just great.
Do you still have all the tapes?
Oh yeah. But you can imagine what shape they're in. They're exposed tapes because it was the reel-to-reel thing. I had one professionally mastered, or whatever you call it, and I couldn't tell what was on it, and it turned out to be not a very good one. So I just bought a reel-to-reel player on eBay, and I'll listen to some more and see if they're worth preserving.
Did you transcribe everything?
I certainly did. It was really...
By typewriter, right?
Oh yeah, of course. Like when they say in the book, dialing the phone,
Linda, you mentioned Andy Warhol and the tapes that he was doing. Was this an influence, and if so, I mean, could you sort of talk a bit about how yours varied in a way, because what he was doing was like uncut?
Yeah. Well, that's what it was. I think I was more influenced by his films, where he would just have the camera on Henry Geldzahler for, 8 hours or something, smoking a cigar, not moving. That kind of reality.
Could you say a bit more about what you saw in that sort of related to what you were doing?
It was just a general feeling. It wasn't specifically, it was just all of these things that were happening around me at one time. That, like documentary film, these really realistic, like the Maysles brothers, when they were at that time doing the Bible salesman film, and I actually had a conversation with Albert Maysles, and we sort of felt like we were doing the same thing and aiming at the same kind of reality.
Theirs was that they were trying to actually capture a story, but with Warhol it was more like it was just whatever happened.
Well, sure, yeah.
But with you, it was more that you were trying to relate a story, wasn't it?
Well, I was hoping it would become a story.
Yes.
I knew some structure would come.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on? Well, I have a theory that New York is the best talking town in the U.S.
There's no doubt.
That wouldn't have been made in L.A.
Oh, no. No.
So yeah, that's something that you know.
It's a very New Yorky, art worldy, a certain milieu. I was going to say Jewish, but the guy is Italian. But that is sort of equivalent. No, it's, I think, very specifically New York. And at that time, with all the dependence on therapists in a very different way than now. People went for years and years and years, and they talked about their therapist. And in this book, the therapist was there on the beach. My therapist, and we talk about him. And we'd be at the same parties. The book, in a way, is one big therapy session. Just people expressing their every feeling.
Was this group, this milieu more
Well, it's interesting you called me Marsha. It's only recently that I've admitted that.
It's a more affluent milieu, you'd say? Upper middle class?
Well, the people on the beach, not as much as it is now. It was strictly an artist's beach. It was called the artist's beach, the beach that we were on. It was almost all sort of the abstract expressionist generation, the second wave people. But there were writers there too. Dr. O was there. But, artists weren't making a lot of money then. Some of them are now.
Did you ever listen to any parts of the conversations you thought this might be maybe too controversial to put in it, and you left it out? Was there anything like that? No?
Well, there's a lot of stuff left. Of course, more stuff was left out than in. But I wasn't thinking that way. It hit me when the book was coming out, and that my parents were going to read it, and I was working at a pretty conventional place, and I actually thought I might lose my job.
What was your job?
I was at Sotheby's doing public relations. Or actually, I was editing an auction magazine.
Did they notice?
In fact, the British head of the American division asked me if he could buy the manuscript. So it was a big turnaround. And even the most conventional people there said, this isn't my scene, but it's really interesting. So I worried in vain. I'm sure there were people who were thinking things they weren't telling me. But
and your parents?
My mother? I just wrote a little piece about this in the Paris Review. My mother immediately went into therapy. Like, in seconds. She was horrified. She was not in tears, but she said, "Oh, I was hoping you'd write a beautiful book." She was so disappointed. My father, on the other hand, never read the book, but he carried it around, showed it to his friends. Look at this nice picture. Oh, I have the original one here. What did I do with that one? And his friends read it and said, "Do you realize what's in this book?" And he said, "Look at the nice picture on the back." So, this was what it was then. This is what I was then. But I had this one wonderful great aunt, which my sister will attest to, who was a very conservative person. And she called me up and she said, this is not a book that I can understand. It's a generation I can't understand. But if anybody in the family gives you any trouble, have them call me. Which was one of the most wonderful things. So, Aunt Pauline.
So you became a celebrity then?
Did I become a celebrity?
When you read the book?
No. The book did not sell that well. I was a teeny bit of a celebrity in London because it was much more popular in London. Even though there was a clergyman in London, in England, who petitioned to ban the book, keep it off library shelves, but he didn't win. No.
How much later did Erica John do her book?
I think 10 years, maybe? Yeah. Do you know what year?
It was in the 70s, I didn't know that was in the 60s.
Yeah, I think it was the 70s.
Yeah.
Derek.
Since you were so New York based, why did you think you did better in London?
I don't know. It just got picked up by some people. Did you know Joan Bakewell had a TV show, and she just really liked it, and she made a big party, invited all the cultural people. I don't know. It just
Well, when the film Shadows,
Cassavetes.
when that came out, America took no notice of it, and it was first recognized in
Oh, really? That's interesting.
in the early 60s,
Huh.
and that was where it sort of began. So
Oh, that's very interesting.
And that was very New York based.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
So there
Well,
was
it's maybe
something
New
in
York, London, yeah.
that that really caught on to these things.
Right.
Well, also it happened with music, didn't it? With Jimi Hendrix, was not known here, and then it was because
Oh, yeah?
of his fame in Britain.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Picked up, yeah.
So?
Right on to everything.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books Author Reading Series. Don't forget that you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.